and you may not ever get to the peak you were at in your 20s and 30s. But relatively speaking, for sure, we can be in the absolute best energetic state, productive state, and connected state of our lives. It isn't that complicated.
Brian, you are probably my best friend that I've never actually met in person. Because every time we've been in the same room together, there's so many people, hands going at you. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go, add another obligation to the bunch. But you are.
Oh, man, I appreciate you, brother. I love you. And it's funny because I got goosebumps for what will be, I'm sure, the first of 101 times in our chat together. That's hard to believe for me that we haven't connected. I know that we've connected kind of same room connection, but not one-on-one. I feel so close to you. I feel so connected to you. That was surprising for me to hear. I'm like, really? Oh my goodness. So bless you. And just who you are, how you show up, how you've supported, me, our movement, everything we're up to with Heroic, with the book, etc. I deeply appreciate you. I love you. And I'm thrilled to be here connected with you right now.
Pretty soon, I'm going to have the book right behind me on my shelf. Probably
this week, by the way.
This week? All right.
This week,
all right.
You're getting the VIP box. Yeah, you're on the top of the list.
So a lot of people don't know who you are. You are CEO of Heroic. You are a modern day philosopher. I can go through all the praises, but why don't you describe who you are and what Heroic is so people can have some context?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm a guy really passionate about figuring out how I can show up as my best, most heroic self in service to my wife, my 2 kids, just turned 11, son, 6-year-old daughter, you, our community, and the broader community that our community serves. So, at the risk of being pretentious, I love the word philosopher. Etymologically, a lover of wisdom, and wisdom is knowledge of life. So when I first discovered that, I just fell in love with the idea, and I said, yeah, that's like me. I want to be a human being that strives to understand how to live and demonstrate my own idiosyncratic expression of these truths I'm studying, ancient wisdom, modern science, so I can help others do the same. And then I've spent half of the last 25 years as a founder, CEO, principally, built and sold 2 social platforms before Facebook. And then when I wasn't doing that, I had enough money to kind of figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up, which was to read and write and teach. So those 2 parts of me are now integrated in Heroic Public Benefit Corporation. Proud of what we've done with Heroic and what I've done entrepreneurially, and even more proud about what we're doing together, integrating those 2 things, creating a social training platform that helps people move from theory to practice to mastery together. That's been scientifically proven to help people change their lives, et cetera. But that's kind of the 2 parts of me, philosopher, CEO, but all in on Heroic, as you know.
Yeah.
Go on, let's go.
I've been motivated.
There we go.
We're showing our tattoos, folks, for those of you that are listening to the podcast. And then you have your book, Arate, comes out here. When is actually the release date?
Dude, it drops November 14th. So you're getting an advanced reader copy literally this week in your VIP box. It's going out November 14th. Is when it comes out, and couldn't be more excited. My
wife thinks I'm actually crazy, Brian, because she just found out that I forget I think I ordered 500 to 1,000 of them for Rock Retirement Club members, but also to give away to you who's listening. I'm excited to get it. I'm really excited to get it. Dude,
well, you are crazy. So I'm surprised that it took this long for your wife to officially declare you as crazy. But this particular context, you're in good company. Literally this morning, a friend of mine who happened to win the second apprentice after working for me, who runs a big venture firm here in Austin, Texas, just bought 400 plus copies for all of his limited partners, CEOs, et cetera. So we've been really blessed to have support, and yours is right there at the top of the list. And I do appreciate, here's to the crazy ones.
What we're going to talk about today, this whole month, is what do we wish our younger self would have known? And we've divided that into a number of domains. And today is energy and mindset. And so I have a couple questions to you about talking to your younger self. So before I ask those questions, I think we should start with the word on your shirt and on your arm, which is arate, because that sort of embodies a little bit of what we're talking about here. And that's the name of your book. What does arate mean?
Yeah, it's an ancient Greek word that we translate weakly as excellence or virtue. And in the book, I tried to answer this question in the most simple way. So it just so happened that my son was going through something in his journey to try to become a chess grandmaster. He's only 11, but he's super passionate about chess. And I used the context of me and him hanging out to describe what I'm going to describe to you right now. Explain it like I'm 10 kind of thing. But the word arete directly translates as excellence or virtue. But the way I like to describe it is that in any given moment, you're capable of being the best version of yourself. And for those who can see when this comes out on video, I draw a line about eye height. You can be this, right? And then below it, I draw another line with my hand that's about a foot below it. And I say, but if you could be this and you are being that, the line below, and there's a gap between who you could have been and who you are actually being, it's in that gap in which regret, anxiety, depression, disillusionment exists. But if you can close the gap in any given moment and express the best version of yourself, there's no room for regret, anxiety, disillusionment, depression, with all the asterisks that it's more complex than that. But when you, in the moment, live with arete, excellence, virtue, you express the best version of yourself. You feel what the ancient Greeks would call eudaimonia, which we translate as flourishing, but it means good soul. You feel like you are connected to the best within you, and that feels amazing. So arete is the means through which we can and do express the best version of ourselves. And it's the one-word summation of everything I've studied, ancient wisdom, modern science, the name of the book, the essence of our coach program, and everything that we do together in a single word, arete.
And that word means a moment in time, right? Because I remember you and I had a discussion, a little coaching session about a week ago on this, where I was suffering from a bout of perfectionism and beating myself up for feeling like I'm so far away from that line of, perfect self, and shaming myself. That's the danger when you set it up of this line versus this line. And you're like, well, why am I not that line yet?
Totally. And then you come back to, some authors frame it up as the gap and the gain. So when I'm talking about the gap, I'm talking about in this moment. So, clearly you and I, where we are in our lives, I'm 49, and I would have liked to have closed the gap a lot more than I have. And we'll talk about me talking to my younger self and what I wish I had known and done that would have allowed me to have more completely fulfilled my potential so far. If you're looking at the gap between where you think you should already be and where you are, you're going to suffer, full stop. When you look back and you look at your current reality, you have to radically accept it. That just is a must, with joy, with celebration. Then you need to look forward and get excited about the gap and say, yeah. Matthew McConaughey describes a hero as the version of himself he's chasing. You do it with joy. You don't do it with a joyless, I hate myself and I didn't do what I wanted to do with my life, I should give up. You do it with all right, it's unfortunate I didn't do what I could have done up until now, but it's unforgivable, as Seth Godin says, to wait any longer. So in that moment in which we are shaming ourselves, that's the moment to live with arete. In that moment, you say, am I currently being my best self by shaming myself and being, abusive literally to myself? Or in this moment, could I remember that this is the time to recommit, shine a flashlight on what's working and what's not working, bring a hammer to changing my life, but get excited about it. And so that's how I've continued to, frankly, struggle to communicate it effectively, because it's so easy for all of us to fall into that perfectionistic trap, me, you, everybody else. But that's some of the way that I'm trying to get better at explaining the two different types of gaps or multiple gaps we could face.
Let's talk to younger Brian. Okay, so we're going to focus on energy and mindset, and let's have the
He's
energy.
Got more hair. So, well, how old are we here? Are we going back to like 20? You got a full head of hair.
Okay, it's going to be 23-year-old Brian.
All right, here we go.
And I'm not going to ask you to put up a photo of that. And we're going to talk about energy. I think you have to start, right? You got to be able to show up. So, what was Brian's energy? Describe Brian from an energy standpoint at, say, 23?
Oh, dude, all I can see him in my mind's eye right now, because I literally just went rummaging through. I didn't keep many pictures, but I've got a box of pictures. So I can see him. He was an incoming first-year student at law school, University of California, Berkeley. I literally can see my ID card from that. That Brian was puffy. He was a little bit tired looking and just, it wasn't quite eating the way that he could. It was a lot of fast food, a lot of pizza. I remember in college, went to UCLA. I'd get the buy one, get one free medium pizzas. I'd eat one for dinner, maybe a little bit more, and then I'd have the next one for breakfast. I knew none of these things that we're going to talk about. None of them. First generation college student, blue collar family. My father worked in a grocery store for 39 years. He struggled with alcohol, which is an important part of my story. His father struggled with alcohol and ended his own life. And I'm giving a keynote on Mental Health Day to talk about the invisible disability that is anxiety and depression. You can't see it in people. And the picture I found, goosebumps, that I will share with you is a picture of me at about 24 years old with my family at one of my sister's weddings. 3 sisters, a brother, my mom and dad. And it looks like a really happy, normal family in a place of worship celebrating a special day, which was a special day. But what you can't see in that picture is my own depression from a year before, impending depression I was going to face a year later, my father's alcoholism, my brother's alcoholism, and their depression, the fact that one of my sisters had needed to go to a facility to deal with her emotional issues. But anyway, all of it was driven in large part by your question of my energy. I knew none of these things: eating, moving, sleeping, breathing. I'd stay up until 2 a.m., doing whatever, getting terrible sleep, eating poorly, rarely exercising. I'd play basketball on, Saturday, and that was my exercise. None of these conversations were present for me, and I suffered as a result of it. It's a long answer to your short question, Roger, but there you go. That's the younger version of me at 23. I did have great hair, though. At 23, the hair was working, so let's go.
Did you know that you didn't have good energy? Did you know that these things were bad for you?
I had no idea. None. I mean, no. Is the short, direct answer. These were not ideas that were present for me. I had read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. Yeah, 7th habit, renewal, sharpen the saw, but that didn't mean anything for me practically in terms of what I was choosing to do and not doing. I was into Tony Robbins as a young man, right around that time, 23. I hadn't gotten into him yet. I found him at 2 a.m., when I'm in a state trying to figure out my life, and there we go. Okay, I'll get that. No, I didn't, which is part of why I work so hard right now to try to explain these ideas to people, that your physiology drives more of your psychology than you almost certainly are aware of, and you can solve it through simple behavioral changes: eating, moving, sleeping. We can talk about what I would tell that version of myself.
Well, that's the next question, obviously. Yeah. So if you were talking to your younger self, and that's a lot of what this is, right? Because we're talking to either women or men that we're mentoring, or to our children or to our grandchildren. What should they know? What would you tell him?
What a great question, to truly feel into that, to truly feel that version of myself. I'd start by saying, I love you, dude. Good work, And we've all faced our challenges, And at 23, I'd been through some stuff and had experienced what I'd experienced. I mean, it's funny too, at the risk of being immodest, I'm in better physical shape now than I've ever been. I don't care now with the physical aesthetics, and I'm not that guy, but that version of me would have loved to look like I look like right now. It's like, all right, well, there you go, dude. So there's something fun too about that, of this version of me actually being there with that version of me. Whereas, I say all the time, you got to be credible, you got to be a radiant exemplar. So I'm literally in better shape now than I was then, 25 years ago.
Yeah, me too.
But there's something about that would be part of the dynamic there. I do exactly what we started to talk about here, which is I look at eating, moving, sleeping, breathing.
So what would you tell this younger guy?
I would tell this younger guy that all of his potential is wrapped up in getting his energy dialed in. And then I would systematically help him architect a new approach to life. Eating, moving, sleeping, breathing, and focusing would be the 5 fundamentals that I would focus on with him physiologically. I'd help him create masterpiece days, get a good night of sleep, PM bookend drives, AM bookend, all the things that we talk about all the time with Heroic. And I'd also get him excited. I teach him the science of hope. I teach him the science of seeing his future as brighter and better than ever before. Agency, the idea that he can achieve that, create a plan, and I'd show him that his energy is going to drive everything. It's going to drive how he shows up in his work and his love. Let's get it right. And I'd also, kind of unasked, but related to the broader context, I'd shake him a bit. I'd wake him up, and I'd let him know, dude, this isn't a dress rehearsal. You've got so much potential. You can do so much great stuff. You've already done great stuff. You know it. Let's go. And I'd help formulate the purpose and the underlying mission orientation that I now get so clearly at that age. But yeah, those are some of the things, and we can talk details of what that means: eating, moving, sleeping, breathing, focusing, and what I'd have him specifically do. But on a high level, that's how I'd approach it.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother thing of, if you're talking to your younger self, how do you even set yourself up so they would hear it?
but I'd show up like this. I'd show up with, like I said, you know what I mean? As the guy that like, dang, look at him. I want some of that. Like literally, that's the playful thing you always hear me talking about. You got to be that radiant exemplar.
So eating, moving, sleeping, breathing. What's the first thing that Brian should do if you wanted to take a baby step?
100%. Quit drinking sugar. So nutrition is going to drive 80% of it. So your gut produces more serotonin than your brain. So your gut health is influencing so much of your psychological health. I'd start there. That's by far the biggest lever. So I'd pull that lever. No more drinking sugar. In fact, no more sugar. Let's get rid of all processed foods, refined foods if we want to go all in. And I'm going to encourage you to go all in. And then we'd architect, you know, an idiosyncratic nutritional strategy there. And then in parallel, I'd have him start getting a good night of sleep. So we'd create a PM shutdown, complete routine. We'd make sure we're in bed for 8 to 9+ hours a day, such that we're getting the sleep that would allow us to flourish. I'd be moving my body. I'd tell him the days that you don't exercise are the days you're popping a depressant. You need to get out and move your body. We do the simple 10,000 steps a day, but I'd get him out moving vigorously, oscillating, training his recovery. But we're sweating. We're training, you know, like a world-class athlete. That's how I show up now. But it doesn't need to be hours a day. Those would be the fundamental things. I'd have him train his breath. I used to have an incredible amount of anxiety as a little kid. I was scared of everything. As a young man, and at that point, I was scared of everything, everything. So my anxiety went down when I removed sugar and grains in particular. Another conversation. I had meditated for like a decade, and then I removed grains, and my sense of social anxiety went down overnight. It was crazy. But I'd have him train his breath as well, which has been my key to developing a more stable sense of calm confidence. And then, of course, there'd be the focus through meditation.
Let's go on the sugar one, because you said stop drinking sugar, stop eating sugar, full stop. So you're talking to somebody, you're talking to a Brian that doesn't understand any of this stuff, right? At that stage. And he's puffy, as you said. Telling that Brian to do something full stop is scary. And we had this conversation about being all in. Why is full stop more important than cutting back?
So there's two things. That Brian was still intense. That Brian still wanted to do things at a very, very high level. That Brian knew that there was something more to life than what I've been conditioned to believe. If I showed up like this with the skills that I now have in communication and modeling, that Brian would pay attention to me. Now, it's a different conversation if you're asking me, the normal person that, you know, kind of does whatever. That's a different answer.
Switch to that less intense person.
Then my ability to communicate well goes down radically. You know, the thing I would do with that person is I'd activate them. I would need to figure out how I can get them to an activation energy point. And again, part of it would be to give them simple little behavioral changes that they can make, that they can get some small wins under their belt, which is really important. I say it with a tone that's somewhat disparaging, but that's important. But the thing that I would really want to do is I'd want to activate them. I'd want people to understand the fact, everyone who's listening to this, understand the fact that you are capable of more than you think. And you know that. You don't need me to say. And more importantly, you're capable of more than how you're showing up right now. No one's going to debate that. Everybody. And again, we've been blessed to work with the most elite of the most elite, the highest level military officers, business executives, et cetera, sports, athletes, coaches, and those who have a hard time getting out of bed. It's the same truth for everybody. Everybody's capable of more, and you know it. And then what's exciting is, how do we systematically architect the little things, to your question, that will help you tap into more of that? And there are a few higher leverage things than the mundane sugar and sleep, et cetera. But I got to get you excited about your life again. Got to get you excited about the fact that you can create a better future. And this is how. And then I'd systematically walk them through the 7 objectives of the book, of our coach program, et cetera.
So a lot of this goes back to mindset then, of
all
helping.
Of it, all of it. Because I'm not going to do anything behaviorally unless my mind's right. If I don't believe that I can create a better future, I won't do anything. And then I'm going to find me annoying. Full stop. No question about it. If I believe I can create a better future, and I believe that there are means through which I can do so that are doable and exciting, and I can see that, make the connection between me doing those things and me having a better life, then my job coaching that person gets a heck of a lot easier, you know? So mindset, it starts and ends with mindset, you know, your behavior.
So I probably should have started there first rather than energy.
No, I think this is perfect because we're hitting over the dominoes of what's required to affect change. And of course, it's both. right? And it's the thoughts and the behaviors that lead to the higher levels of energy, that lead to the productivity, the connection, the financial rewards, and all the other things we want.
So let's pivot a little bit to mindset, and we're weaving these in together, or you are, how all of this stuff is going to be. And you hit on the science of hope, which is you have to have a vision for a better future of yourself. Otherwise, you won't get out of bed, right? That's a lot of it. I see that in boomers and my generation and others, but I think we generally see it a lot in teens and 20-somethings and 30-somethings in terms of not seeing a better future in the world or for themselves for a variety of reasons. And we don't need to go into the reasons. How do we mentor these people? You know, these younger version of Roger or Brian or Sally or Betty. How do we mentor them from a mindset standpoint? What do they need to know?
I'd make sure I left a copy of the book with them that he wrote, X decades ahead. But the first thing we got to do is we got to know the ultimate game. So at that version of me, and in almost every version of all of us, we've been seduced to play the wrong game. 2,500-year-old challenge. So as you know, the way I frame it up is, look, ancient wisdom, modern science. Let's ask Aristotle and Martin Seligman, the founder of positive psychology. What's the ultimate game? The ultimate game isn't collecting Instagram followers. It isn't making a lot of money and impressing people with your fame and wealth and hotness. It's becoming a better person, deepening your personal relationships, and making a contribution, and living with arete, moment to moment to moment, so you can flourish. And I would take the proper amount of time to make sure that he understood that's the ultimate game. And you'll win the other games by playing that game well. Then I would teach him how to forge anti-fragile confidence. The number one thing, goosebumps, that I wish I knew at 23 years old, rather than 43, or however long it took me to learn this, is what it means to have anti-fragile confidence, which of course is my extension, as you know, my extension of Phil Stutz's idea from The Tools and Stutz, the Netflix documentary, my beloved coach. I've worked with him over 400 times one-on-one. In one of our very first sessions, he says, you have a lot of emotional stamina, perhaps more than I've ever seen. I said, I have no idea what emotional stamina is, but thanks, that sounds awesome. End of our chat. Next coaching session, this is one of the first 5 coaching sessions. I said, hey, what's emotional stamina? And he said, well, emotional stamina is what you can endure a lot of challenges. You're able to push through challenges at a very high level. And he said, what you need to know is this, that I've architected my entire philosophy in part around this. The worse you feel, the more committed you need to be to your protocol. So the worse you feel, the more committed you are to your protocol. Now, that's a really interesting thing. There are 2 aspects to that. First of all, what's your protocol? Who are you at your best? What do you do when you feel most alive and most productive and most connected? Because we all have felt great. The question is, what did you do? And then you got to know what that protocol is. And then when you feel like poop emoji, what do you do? Most people, including my 23-year-old self, would do the stupid things right when I needed to do the most important, best things. I would go, what would I do at that point? I don't even know. I never was into alcohol because my dad, and his thing, but I'd eat all the junk food. I'd numb myself. I'd probably watch TV
that
on
comfort food and the comfort shows.
The 10 channels that existed in 1990 or whatever that was, 7, We all numb ourselves and we tend to avoid our problems when life gets hard. But what if instead, when life kicks us around, which it always will, we had the mindset to double down on our protocol? If we do that, and when we do that, we become anti-fragile, not fragile, not resilient, the opposite of fragile. We get stronger the more life kicks us around. That would be the thing that I would not stop talking until I knew that version of me got it, because then you connect the mindset to the behaviors, which drives the energy, which drives the productivity and the connection, and then you're unstoppable. It's as close to invincibility as you can get. If when life hits you hard, you use it to get stronger by doing the simple things you do when you're at your best, everything changes. Even if you're only 1, 2, 5, 10% successful on that.
A lot of that pre-assumes, and I think this is part of the self-examination, that what is my protocol? What do I do when I'm at my best? Or, and we all have those little instances of, oh, wow, that was me. And not just acknowledging that, but why was I that way? What did I do beforehand? So it causes, say, your younger self or someone listening who's talking to someone they're mentoring or their children, of helping them put a connection. So when they are at their lowest self, they have something to grasp onto. Okay, I just need to go for a walk. Or I just need to back away from this conversation.
Yep.
and reset.
I need to turn off Netflix and get a good night of sleep. I mean, we can demystify it, because if we were able to think about a time in which we showed up and we felt really energized, and it's one of the exercises in the book, and of course the Heroic App and coaching program is all about this, but just get out a piece of paper, blank piece of paper, imagine yourself at your best energy-wise, and then draw a line down the middle and say, do on the left, don't on the right. What do you do when you're at your best energy-wise? Just write down whatever comes to mind. 1, 2, 3, I exercise, I eat pretty well, I get more sleep. All right, cool. What do you not do when you're at your best? Oh, I don't drink a lot of alcohol, I'm not getting ripped. Oh, that's helpful to know. Okay, cool. When you're training for the marathon or the sprint triathlon, you tend to show up a little bit more powerful. You do this, you don't do that. Just give me 1, 2, 3 things. You can architect your entire life around those 1, 2, 3 things. And then I'd say, all right, when you're productive, when you're killing it at work and you're just showing up powerfully, same thing, new piece of paper. Do, don't. Give me 1, 2, 3 things you do. What things do you not do? Oh, I don't waste all day looking at social media. All right, cool. Let's keep that in mind the next time we want to be productive. And then what do you do in your relationships when you're spot on? Oh, I tell my wife I love her more often. I spend time with my kids without my phone. All right, cool. How about we do those things more often and don't do those things as often? Life-changing. It's exciting, to simplify it all, to figure out you've already won. We just need to bring more clarity to it and then more consistency to your engagement in those simple behaviors. And then everything changes. And I'm not overstating it, because everything changes when you can run that.
I'm experiencing it. I've seen numerous other people experience it. Then you have, when you start to create these bright lines of what do I do at my best in mindset or in energy in this instance? And we'll get into when I'm with family or at work or in my money. Those will be conversations for another day. What will end up happening is you'll have the things that you do, you'll have the things that you don't do, and you'll screw it up. You're going to have days, you're going to have moments where you screw it up. And the key here, and this is, I learned this from you and from Phil Stutz, is to obviously not shame yourself, but then correct the glitch and make it a game rather than a shame.
Yep.
Can you talk about the glitches and how this becomes a game if you think about it in a healthy way?
100%. So we create a checklist or a scorecard in which we're clear on, all right, well, this is me at my best, right? Now, you're not going to hit the target every day if you're an archer going out trying to hit a target. You're going to miss. But you want to use those misses as opportunities to get better. So rather than shaming yourself, you go, oh, all right, cool. Well, I did that. I know that that's not quite my ideal. What could I have done a little bit differently? And let me recommit to doing it differently. And then, if you used to spiral out, I used to be out for months, not even aware I was out for years, actually, more accurately, and then months, and then weeks, and then days. And now I have fun seeing how quickly I can turn it around. And this is Phil Stutz's another big contribution to my life and to the world is he says you want to collect turnarounds. So you want to expect glitches, first of all. Most people are still naive to the idea that they're never going to be perfect and they're never going to be exonerated, he says. So you got to know it's supposed to be hard and it's always going to be hard and you're going to fall short. Then when you inevitably fall short, don't shame yourself. Use it as an opportunity to turn it around and to get a little bit better. You're like an experimenter with a lab coat on. And I share a bunch of stories on me falling short, when I'm yelling at the kids, right? My son gets upset with me and calls me a jerky face, in the car. And then 10 minutes later, he wants to drive the car home.
A jerky face?
A jerky face. I quote him. It's so good. Jerky face. Then we get to we live in the country, right? The last 100 yards is like, whatever, country living. He gets in my front seat and he's, steering it while I'm driving it or whatever. Hey, Daddy, can I drive home? Me, in that moment. Well, of course, dude, let's go. We're good. You know what I mean? That would be the arete thing to do. But what do I say? I think of, no, dude, you just called me jerky face 10 minutes ago. I'm not a big fan of that. No, dude. Boom, gap. Oh, no. But in that moment, when we fall short, to go to the exercise here, and I'll tell you what, the rest of that night was a circus. My daughter, my son, it was just one of those, you have 2 kids, you know what I'm talking about, could have gone better. So the next morning I'm looking at it and I'm like, where did I go wrong yesterday? And I identified that it was that moment right there when he asked me if he could drive home. Had I said yes, literally the entire night would have been different. I have goosebumps right now. So rather than shaming myself, I go right back to that moment And I say, all right, that needed work. What could I have done? I could have said, all right, buddy, I'm a little bit frustrated, but for sure, let's go. And then we would have had a certain, set of things that would have happened. It would have been a different night. That's what I try to do in practice when things go wrong. So when you do go to the fast food restaurant, or when you do yell at your kids, or when you do binge watch Netflix or whatever, step back, look at that moment, bring a flashlight to it, and see, yeah, I did that. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I could have done this. Next time I'm going to try better. And then get back. After a bad day, you want to make the next day as good of a day as you possibly can. Then you go from spiraling out for a long period of time to a little glitch. All right, cool. Let me bounce back stronger.
I think of if you make me mad, I'm calling you a jerky face, just so you know that, Brian.
Dude, jerky face, that's a good one, isn't it? Where did you come up with that jerky face?
That's an 11-year-old for you. And from personal experience, what I have found with those glitches is when I do shame myself and when I'm spiraling downward, then I get into the whole, I'm going to shame myself for shaming myself.
Yep.
And I just going to compound it. And so that is normal, right?
Yep.
Two places I want to go here to end it. One is I mentor a number of people, but I'm mentoring a gentleman who wants to become something that I'm doing, what I have become. And to him, he sees me way up here as, oh, Roger's got it all figured out. Little does he know, in my head, I don't feel like I'm just working my, I have everything. I'm in the same place he is. I'm just trying to figure it out as well. And so it can be intimidating when we talk to our children or when we talk to younger selves or people that we're mentoring. They think we have it all figured out when they don't realize we're not going to be we're not exonerated just like they are. But it can be intimidating because Brian is so far ahead that there's no way I could get to that level of whether it's physicality or mindset or anti-fragile discipline. How do we help someone see that it's not a comparison game and that it's a journey?
You share your story. So if I'm trying to come off right now in everything I do as the perfectly polished guy who you want to be like, and I never had any challenges. Maybe I'll talk about him just because I got to talk about it. It's got to be vulnerable because that's what Brene Brown says, but I've otherwise got it all figured out, right? Well, then you're going to look at me and go, God, I can't be that guy. But if I take the time to truly share with you how I have navigated my own challenging times, and by the way, the 23-year-old version of me was months away from wanting to end his own life. So in that snapshot, I can see that. And then I got through that, and then I wanted to do it again through the next cycle that I went through.
What was the thought as to why it wasn't worth going?
I had all of this energy that you feel right now and no concept of how I would ever integrate it into the world. The metaphor I created for myself in my own little journaling at the time, went to law school, then I dropped out of law school and I hit the bottom, depths of despair, bad, dark time. And I remember thinking, it's like I'm a fire hydrant with all this energy. And there's this like clear glass window that it's hitting and going right back against my face. And I have no idea how I'm going to show up in the world. I looked around, and I'm like, I don't want that job or that job or that job, but I can't see how I'm going to live a life of meaning and purpose within the constraints of our reality. And then to your point, and we need to highlight it, I thought it was just me. I thought that I was the only one that felt so much fear and felt so much anxiety and felt so much despair and felt so much lack of meaning. I literally thought it was just me. I was certain I was the only one. I couldn't talk to anyone else about it. Everybody else had it all figured out. It gives me tears in my eyes right now. And this is rule number one. You mentioned it, to shine a light on it. Common humanity. You're not alone. First of all, if I had a friend like me and a guide like me at that time, he would have told me all these things, and then he would have helped me move. But you got to know that you're not alone. Me making that distinction and then being taught by my great teachers what I could do to systematically architect it.
That's the exclamation point. You are not alone, right? There are helpers to think of.
Fred Rogers included. He's one of my guides. I got him up on my wall. You can't see him, but Fred Rogers is there. But not only is he a beautiful man I aspire to be, and I am so not him with my parenting and as a father and all those things, that continues to be my biggest challenge. I'm proud of who I am and all that, but that continues to be my biggest challenge. But he talks about the tortures of the damned that he experienced trying to write his shows. You think of Mr. Rogers, joyful guy. He was tortured by it. Eleanor Roosevelt talked about the same thing. These people, Winston Churchill is above me. You can't see him. Black Dog, Abraham Lincoln on my other wall, depression, suicidal tendencies and thoughts. These great individuals, none of them were perfect. Not one of them. So when we embrace that and we bring self-compassion, we can get that agency, that power, and that joy back to realize, wait, I'm not alone, and it can be solved. The combination of those two things I found to be beautiful and is a really important thing I'm glad we highlighted directly.
As you know, we frame this, Brian, as we're talking to our younger selves. And I started this before you came on with a quote from Robert Louis Stevenson, is if the youth knew and we could do, I'm messing it up now because I don't have it in front of me, but as we're talking about wisdom to our younger self or to our children, we have to be careful of, and I feel this, I'm 56 years old, and I feel like I have so much I have to make up for my mediocre 20s and 30s as a father, as a husband, as a business person. I feel like I look at that dude and I still haven't reconciled how much shame, and it's never too late, right? It doesn't matter if you're 60 or 70. If you're going to talk to somebody about health or energy or about mindset, the best way to talk to them about it, if you're trying to mentor them, is to start doing it yourself now, right?
And to get excited, but to get excited. So I'm talking now to the 50, 60, 70-year-old who's listening to this. And so now I'm telling you directly, you can be in the best energetic, psychological, productive, connected state of your life. Full stop. No question about it. None. Now, of course, you've aged biologically, and there's a certain runway that we all have in our lives. And you may not ever get to the peak you were at in your 20s and 30s. But relatively speaking, for sure, we can be in the absolute best energetic state, productive state, and connected state of our lives. It isn't that complicated. And the good news is the baseline was so low for me and you at 2030, in terms of what we had to exceed. It's like, oh, that wasn't that hard, but it's perfect. You're carrying too much. And I'll tell you what, too, 50, 60, 70-year-olds, look at your waist to height ratio. You want to predict your morbidity? You want to know how many years you have left on the planet statistically? Look at your waist to height ratio. If you are carrying visceral fat around your midsection, I'm getting intense right now, you're welcome. If your waist to height ratio is greater than 0.5, then you have a higher degree of risk for death by any cause than if it's less than 0.5. To give you the math, I'm 6 feet tall. I'm obviously lean if you're seeing me now. 6 feet tall is what, 72 inches. My waist can be 36 inches to hit that 0.5 target. It's significantly less than that. But you listening, if you want to do the math, and then get excited because a few levers you can pull in your energy via the nutrition we talked about, the sleep and the movement, can give you more energy than you've ever had in your life. Now you know how to do it, and you can show up in your own life, doing your own productive and connected things, and then be, as Roger just said, the exemplar to your staff, to your colleagues, to your kids and grandkids. And they're like, what the heck happened to grandpa or grandma? Oh my God, look at them, or mom or dad or whatever it is. And you have a credibility and an energy that's joyful, that's radiant, that's compelling. And you also know what you did in order to go from here to there. But there you go, uninvited intensity of the excitement.
Now that gives me goosebumps because that escalates, that compounds over all different aspects of your life.
Yeah, and it's never too late. It just isn't. The body adapts so quickly, and the mind follows as we get our physiology dialed in, the psychology is dialed in.
I am so excited to have your book in my hand and to share it with everybody in the club and with those that are listening, so we can not just share our wisdom with those younger than us, but to start living it.